The mountain didn't just crack, it vanished into a pillar of white heat. Deep inside the jagged limestone of the Strait of Hormuz, a subterranean command center, the regime's irreplaceable nerve center was vaporized before the first alarm could even sound. No spinning radar dishes, no frantic launch of interceptors. The S-300 batteries stayed cold, their screens frozen in a digital death stare. 4 decades of secret billion-dollar investment turned to ash in 94 seconds. Adversary commanders always make the same mistake. They build impossible walls of steel and concrete, convinced that depth is a shield. They believed the forbidden fortress of the Gulf was a checkmate against the U.S. Navy. While the Iranian crews were still calibrating their optics, the hammer was already through the roof. Most analysts missed the logic of the strike. They looked for the plane, they looked for the trail, they found nothing. But there is a new cold truth in the strait. If you move, you are seen. If you are seen, you are dead. And in those 94 seconds, the joint forces of the United States and Israel proved that the fortress has no roof. To understand why that command center died while its defenders were still drinking their morning tea, you have to look 22,000 m above the clouds. While the Iranian regime was busy fueling their missiles in what they believed were secret subterranean bunkers, a silent, unblinking hunter was already tracing the heartbeat of their engines. This is the new high ground. The U.S. Space Force established in 2019. This branch is about the cold infrared omniscience of the present. The U.S. has deployed a net of satellites packed with infrared sensors so sensitive they can detect a heat signature no larger than a cigarette cherry from a distance of 240 mi. To put that in perspective for those of us back home, that's the distance from New York City to Washington, D.C. Imagine standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and being able to see a match being struck in Times Square. The moment an Iranian crew began the process of readying a ballistic missile for launch, they were already glowing as a bright, unmistakable bloom on a high-definition screen in a windowless room in the American heartland. The information travels at the speed of light. It flows directly into the giant golf balls, the massive white ratomies dotting the American and Allied countryside, where it is processed by computers that think in nanosecons. Within moments of a heat signature appearing, the U.S. Space Force has a lock. They are generating a coordinate set that is being fed into a weapon system thousands of miles away. The adversary is being targeted before they have even finished their pre-launch checklist. While the satellites are providing the eyes from the vacuum of space, U.S. Cyber Command and the IDF's Joint Cyber Unit are already deep inside the enemy's skull, working to sever the nerves. This is what General Dan Kane refers to as layering non-kinetic effects. The goal isn't to destroy the machines. Not yet. The goal is to make the machines stop talking to each other. At the heart of the Iranian defense is the Mirage 4 Radar A system. Thrawn claims makes the Russian S-400 look like a museum piece. It is an impressive piece of engineering on paper capable of a radar sweep that covers 240 mi, roughly the distance from London to Paris. But the Mirage 4 is currently being fed digital ghosts. Think of a radar like a whale surfacing for air. To see the world, it must emit a massive detectable burst of electromagnetic energy. Every time the enemy's radar surfaces to find a target, the kill web is there to shove them back under the waves. The radars are still spinning. The cooling fans are still humming, but they are no longer reporting what is actually in the sky. They are reporting a hallucination. A battery commander on the north side of the engagement zone sees an empty, peaceful sky, while his counterpart just 5 miles away sees a screen saturated with 500 phantom targets. At 1:30 a.m., the physical world begins to burn, but not in the way the Earth expected. From the cavernous bomb bays of B-52, Strat Fortress heavy bombers loitering in international airspace waves of ADM-160M ALD are released into the night. These are 300 lb ghosts with wings, and they are the ultimate provocators. Each ADM-160M-D is equipped with a signature augmentation system that mimics the exact radar cross-section of a B-1B Lancer or an F-15E Strike Eagle. To the Iranian operators, it looks like a massive multi-axis American air raid is descending on their forbidden fortress. Their training manuals offer only one correct response to a threat of this magnitude: fire everything. And they do. In the bunkers, the launch buttons are pressed. A single-seed 4B interceptor missile cost the Iranian regime roughly $2 million to produce a significant chunk of their annual defense budget. One ADM-160 Mies decoy costs about as much as a used pickup truck. For the next 30 minutes, the Air Sea spends 40 years of strategic savings to shoot down plastic glass and circuit boards. Every interceptor spent is one less round in the magazine for when the real predators arrive. More importantly, every time they fire, they are turning on a high-intensity flashlight in a dark room. They are being forced into a dilemma where their only defensive action, firing their missiles, is also the very thing that ensures their absolute destruction. Once the Space Force sees the digital handshake begins, this is where the sheer audacity of the collaboration between the US and the Israeli Defense Forces creates a strategic nightmare for the adversary. We call it the kill web, and it is a masterpiece of integrated warfare. The data from that satellite 22,000 mi up is simultaneously pushed to the cockpit of an Israeli F-35C Lightning II and the Combat Information Center of a U.S. Arleigh Burke-class destroyer loitering in the Gulf. While the Iranian commanders were reaching for their headsets to give the order to fire those headsets, were already dead. This is the work of U.S. Cybercom and U.S. Spacecom. Before the first American or Israeli kinetic weapon leaves the rail, a silent infection has already traveled through the enemy's own communication lines. Think about the logic of the trap. If the Iranian commander turns his radar on to find the aircraft he knows are coming, he becomes a massive glowing beacon for a beam-following missile that will shred his position in seconds. If he turns it off to hide and survive, he is blinded and he dies anyway by the precision-guided Tomahawk cruise missile that already remembers exactly where his bunker is located. There is no correct answer. There is no escape. There is only the inevitable in this theater. The US and Israel operate as a single, flawless entity. The F-35C Lightning II is a quarterback in the sky. It assigned tasks, identified gaps in the Iranian defense, and removed bottlenecks in real time. It's like a scalpel being guided by 1,000 invisible hands from space. If you've ever stood watch on the deck of a Gerald R. Ford-class carrier, or you've got a son or daughter out there in the Gulf right now standing that same watch, drop a comment below. We see you, and we know exactly what it takes to maintain that level of perfection under pressure. We are grateful, and we read every single comment you post. But how do you find one true target in a sea of 10,000 decoys? How does the U.S. Navy know which truck carries an irreplaceable ballistic missile and which one is just a $30,000 decoy made of plywood, silver paint, and heat lamps? That is the job of the digital guillotine Project Maven. This is AA-driven warfare at its most terrifyingly efficient. The U.S. military is currently leveraging AI systems provided by Palantir and Anthropic's Claude AI to sift through a literal ocean of sensor data in real time. In a traditional war, a human analyst would have to look at thousands of satellite photos to find a pattern. It would take days. By then, the missile has been fired and the truck has moved. For the algorithm, it takes seconds. The scale of this execution is hard to wrap your head around. By March 13th, the US and Israel had struck 15,000 targets. It means that every 4 hours, a new set of 1,000 targets was being identified, verified, and vaporized. The AI removes the noise. It ignores the plywood decoys because it can see that they don't have the thermal mass of a real engine. It identifies the exact subterranean node where the regime was hiding its most valuable high-end hardware. Iranian soldiers move in the middle of the night during the height of a blinding sandstorm, thinking the weather is their shield. But the U.S. Space Force eyes see through the sand like it's clear glass. And the AI calculates the wind resistance for the Jibu-39 small-diameter bomb before the pilot even has to think about the release point. As the war progressed, we watched the Iranian strategy shift from saturation isolation. It was the sound of a fortress crumbling from the inside out. On the first day of Operation Epic Fury, the regime launched a desperate swarm, 167 ballistic missiles and 541 drones. They tried to throw everything they had at the wall, hoping to find a crack. They failed. By day 15, that massive surge had been reduced to a pathetic trickle, just 4 missiles and 6 drones. Every time an Iranian crew moved a launcher into the open, the ghost in the sky was already calling in the coordinates. Before the leveling jacks on the truck could even touch the ground, a standoff missile from a USF/A-18 Super Hornet was already screaming toward them at